Close your eyes. I want you to imagine that you are blind. You can't see anything. Now pretend that you are deaf, which means you can't hear anything. Think about what your life would be like. Today we'll begin a book about Helen Keller, a girl who was deaf and blind, but who learned to speak and read. This is a biography, the story of a person's life. This one was written by Margaret Fetty. Being blind and being deaf are two kinds of disabilities. We will see how Helen learned a manual alphabet. Manual means you use your hands. She used her fingers to make the shapes of letters. She also learned to read Braille. That's a writing that has small bumps. You can feel the letters. A biography usually tells the story of someone's life in order, starting with the time the person was born. That is how Margaret Fetty planned this book. But she doesn't start out with Helen's birth. First, she tells us about Helen making a speech when she was all grown up. Then she goes back to the beginning. As we read the story, think about what you might have done to help Helen if you were her parent. Later, we'll discuss the few suggestions that you thought of. The book is titled Helen Keller, Break Down the Walls. And this book is available on Epic if you ever have a chance on your own to go and read it. An amazing speech. Helen stood before a crowd in Montclair, New Jersey. She was 32 years old. For the first time in her life, she was giving a lecture to a large group of people. Helen was terrified. Her voice was rough. She spoke in a whisper. At times, it was hard to understand her. The audience had to listen carefully. This is a poster from Helen's first speaking tour in 1913. Helen's speech amazed the audience. It was the first public talk given by Helen Keller, a woman who had been deaf and blind for most of her life. Helen could tell when the audience liked her speech. Their clapping hands were caused the floor to vibrate. She could feel the vibrations with her feet. This is a picture of Helen Keller around 1914, a year after she gave her first speech. A mysterious illness. It took great courage for Helen to speak in front of a crowd. Yet Helen had an important message to share. She wanted people to know that blind and deaf people should get an education. Not being able to see or hear was something Helen knew a lot about. After all, she had been blind and deaf since she was 19 months old, so that's just a little bit younger than 2 years old. Helen could see and hear when she was a baby. This is a picture of the house that she grew up in Tuscumbia, Alabama. When Helen was born on June 27, 1880, she was a healthy baby. Then, in February 1882, a mysterious illness made Helen very sick. She had a high fever. When the sickness ended, Helen was not able to see or hear. A dark and silent world. Since Helen could not hear or see people speak, she did not learn how to talk. Helen used her hands and bodies to communicate. If Helen wanted bread, she would pretend to cut slices and spread butter. If she wanted someone to come with her, she would pull on the person. This is a picture of her father, Captain Arthur Keller, and her mother, Kate Keller. Helen helped do chores around the house. She folded the family's clean clothes and put them away. Even in her dark and silent world, Helen knew she was different. By feeling faces, she could tell that people moved their lips to communicate. Helen became frustrated because she could not do the same. As a result, Helen grew wild. She often kicked and screamed in anger. This is a picture of Helen when she was around 7 years old.